everybody's going to give you their own recipe. And so you will resonate with some readers, and you'll like them. And some other readers, you're going to be like, yeah, well, that reader didn't do it for me. So it's finding someone that you can trust, and somebody whose message resonates with you. That's important.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kirby Valladares, and welcome to Spirit Said So. Together, we'll explore powerful stories of near-death experiences and spiritual gifts, conversations that may forever change the way you see life. Today's guest is someone who reintroduced the tarot cards to me. A very special person for me. Lorena McElwain is a lifelong student of metaphysics and a tarot practitioner since 1995. 30 years. She uses the tarot as a tool for self-growth and spiritual development. Lorena enjoys teaching others about the tarot and hosts Tarot Tuesdays at the Arlington Metaphysical Church here in Virginia. It's for anyone who's interested in developing hands-on experience with the cards. You can also find her classes at arlingtonmeta.org, including the upcoming Ancient Egyptian Symbology in the Tarot on November 1st at the chapel. Lorena is also a member of the chapel and a member of the Capital Tarot Society. Folks, please welcome Miss Lorena McElwain. Hey, Lorena, how are you?
Thank you, Kirby. I'm doing great. Thank you for hosting me today. I was just thinking it was actually in October of 1995 that I started learning the tarot. So, very apropos to be
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Wow. That is a long time. So, yeah, so let me start with how did you get into tarot, and were you very spiritual before you got into tarot?
So I think for me, it was a progression. I grew up in LA and Texas. My grandmother lived in Mexico. We visited her once every few years, so I didn't have a lot of exposure to her, but she was the spiritual and religious one in the family. And she was a very interesting person because she grew up speaking Nahuatl, the Aztec language, with her grandmother and had a lot of those traditions, but she was also a very devout Catholic. She sent my mother to Catholic school, and my mother told stories about how the nuns traumatized her and then swore she would not do the same to her children. As a result, we grew up detached from the church. Yet I knew we were supposed to be Catholic. And I had a lot of curiosity around that. We would visit people who were of different backgrounds, and I remember I would often just sit and read their books while my parents were visiting. And so I was little, maybe elementary school, but I remember reading uh, books in homes of Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons, or whatever they were, and I would just kind of gravitate to those books and just be fascinated about what was in there. So when I was about 13 years old, I decided that I needed to look more into what being a Catholic was all about. And I started going to church by myself. And for about 2 or 3 years, I went to church by myself every Sunday. I was in a play, but I couldn't really wrap my head around a God that seemed a little bit angry and judgy, and at times vengeful. And so, as a kid who didn't really have that formal structure, it was kind of scary. And I thought, wait, there needs to be another way to relate to spirit. And so I decided to start at the beginning. I started reading about Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, Roman, Norse, just all kinds of things. Read the full volume of the Divine Comedy when I was 15. And so I developed an interesting perspective on spiritual matters. A lot of it through comparison. So I would pick a topic like creation of the world or creation of mankind, and then would look at these different mythologies and these different books and traditions, and see what they had in common, what they had, just differently. When I was about 15 years old, I had an Italian teacher who used the I Ching, the Chinese Book of Changes, as a self-growth tool. And I hadn't thought about spirituality and self-growth through tools, but I was really curious about it, and she agreed to teach me how to do it. I got really good at it. Then when I went to college, I was really busy and kind of got away from it. And I ended up in Pittsburgh in 1995. Did a 1 year of grad school there. So I was new to Pittsburgh, was walking around the neighborhood, and came around a metaphysical store that was in my neighborhood. And I remember, oh, this is, the tools, like the spiritual tools. And they had different classes on angels and crystals and whatever. I was just inspired to go to the tarot class. It was on Wednesday night. So while I was there going to grad school every Wednesday, I was at this bookstore learning from a couple that taught tarot, and that's how I got interested and began looking into it.
When you started looking into mythology, Greek mythology, the Egyptians, what was it that really changed for you? Because you said that you were kind of conflicted, when you were going to church and you were wondering, this can't be it, right? This can't be this type of God. Well, so what changed for you at that time?
Sure. So a big thing that changed is the thought that you don't need to have an intermediary, between you and spirit, between you and God, that you can have your own relationship, um, and that you can develop that on your own in a meaningful way, and being a more sort of proactive participant in that spiritual development, as opposed to showing up every week somewhere, sitting down and being lectured on what is or what isn't or what should be, that you could explore this on your own and take it into your own hands.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that later, but I would love to hear more about how you started taking these classes in Pittsburgh and what really kind of drew you in with the tarot.
Well, that was teaching the class made it a very safe environment, right? We would ask questions. They taught us how to ask questions and how to put the stories together. They had a lot of decks. They had a big box with about 100 decks in them, and if you didn't have one, you could borrow one from them, or you could buy one at the store. And I was just really surprised at the knowledge that we could gain through these cards, the different perspectives that it provided us, and how sometimes if we trusted in the message, we could almost be co-creators of our life. And so that was also really interesting to me, in that if I was going through a difficult situation, I had two choices. I could sit back and let life happen and just react to it, or I could ask the question, what do I need to know about this? What is the barrier? What is the best way that I can approach it? And then trust that that was going to lead to maybe a better result, or it was going to mitigate the impact of something that I couldn't change. But now I'm actively, trying to influence the outcome and my experience in it, as opposed to just sitting down and letting life just pass me by.
And I know we've talked about a local store that's here that for years I've driven by it, but I've never gone in, and it does look a little scary. But now I'm very tempted to go in there because I do want to look at some of the things that they sell there. But yeah, so I wanted to ask you first, like, what made you want to go in there? Did you feel intimidated at first? And then for someone who's curious, what would you suggest for them to kind of overcome that little fear that they may have.
Haven't thought about metaphysical things or self-growth uh, for probably most of my college years. I was working full time, going to school full time, and I just kind of had gotten away from my spiritual development. But I think somewhere inside, I missed it. And so when I walked by the store, I was on the way to the grocery store. I didn't have a car, so I had to walk. And I remember looking in the window and seeing their posters and their flyers, and I immediately thought of the I Ching, and I thought, oh, this is like the I Ching, but with other tools. And I thought, oh, well, let me go in here. I was just naturally, immediately curious. I wasn't intimidated. It just kind of reminded me of the I Ching, and I went in there to see what it was about and what they had. They sold a lot of used books, and they had all kinds of tools, candles, oils, herbs, tarot cards, pendulums, jewelry, lots of different things. And I was just really curious. And then I stopped by to see the flyers on all the classes that they took. And then I noticed this, the tarot one just caught my attention, and it was Wednesdays at 7:30. It was a time that I was available. And I thought, I'm gonna go check it out. I didn't I didn't know the city. I was brand new to the city. I didn't have a community there, and I didn't really have anything to do other than go to school. So I thought this would be a good way to just do something else. I understand that it can be intimidating to go into a store like this, but I would say, just go in, look around. You don't have to touch anything if you don't want to, but just look around and see what kinds of things you gravitate to, because spiritual development, it doesn't happen just through tarot or through religion. There's lots of tools, and you don't know what might resonate with you. You might be attracted to pendulums or candles or something. And if you have a question, ask questions, but just uh, you know, give yourself that opportunity to expose yourself to those things, and then see if anything speaks to you.
Yeah. And could you give a little bit more of a description about the I Ching?
Yeah, the I Ching is also known as the Chinese Book of Changes. It's the sort of one of the foundational books in Confucianism. And kind of think about it like, like the Torah for the Jewish, or. Um, and this teacher that I had, I was studying Italian, and she was Italian, and I don't know, she brought it in one day, and she was doing these readings for other teachers, and it was like lunchtime, and I just kind of happened to be around and know and notice what she was doing. So I approached her later, and I was asking her questions, and she just kind of looked at me, and she wasn't really sure if she should tell me what she was doing, or what this was, but I insisted enough that she did a reading for me, and I thought it was really cool. And so now I wanted to learn this. And so eventually she came around, and she would teach me on the weekend. So it's based on a hexagram. Um, you have these coins, three coins that six coins that you toss, and then based on the patterns of the coins, whether they land on tails or heads, they create a pattern. I think there's 64 hexagrams. They're called because there's 6 lines, and so you have one pattern that represents mountain, and another one that represents a lake, or something else. And so you might get mountain over lake, or lake over lake, and each one has a passage, and that passage relates to the question that you asked. And I just got really good at interpreting those. And I was so good that I could just see the pattern and immediately know, oh, that's this hexagram, and how to apply that hexagram to the situation.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Kind of aware of it because I know you had mentioned this before, and I believe we talked about, how you got into tarot. So I do remember it. And but I didn't realize a little bit more about, like you said, the mountain and the lake. what happened next? Like, as far as like, when did you say, okay, you know what? Now the cards are the ones that I'm really gravitating to, and now I want to do readings for people.
So the whole year that I spent in Pittsburgh, I went to that Wednesday evening class on a regular basis and just kind of got better and better. But I was just doing them for, for primarily just me, and as that tool of self growth. I may have done one or two for close friends, but I wasn't really reading for the public. It turns out the program that I was going to at the time wasn't really one that was resonating with me, so I didn't go back the second year. I went, back to Texas, and my sorority was having a fundraiser during homecoming week, and I volunteered to do tarot readings as a fundraiser for them because they were brainstorming what to do, and they wanted to do something a little different. And I was having an alumni at that point, but I said, hey, why don't I do these readings? And they thought that was a great idea. Probably not the best way to start doing public readings, because I remember I had a long line. This event was supposed to be from 6 to 11, and I probably started reading about 5:45 and went nonstop to midnight.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was exhausted, and I was like, I'm never doing that again. So then it took a long time for me to come back to do public reading, because I was just, so exhausted. But it was an interesting experience. That was the first time I read for strangers, and I read for a lot of strangers who asked all kinds of things. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, I was like, what? Well, I think, was that the first time that you realized is like, oh, I can't be doing this many readings in such a short period of time because it'll take a toll on me physically and mentally? Was that your first time, since you said that was your first time doing readings for others, right? I mean, you said you had done
Yeah.
friends before, but
Yeah,
not
but
nothing to
just
this
here and
extent.
there. Yeah, just here and there, a little reading for a friend, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But sporadically, I'd never even done two back to back. And so I thought, oh, I do this, help out the sorority. That was a lot. I know better now. That you have to, safeguard your energy. It
Right.
does, I wouldn't say it takes a toll on you, but it does tire you out when you're doing it so much. So now
Mhm.
I know I have to be, careful. And I've done other big venues like that, but uh smaller scale. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I did I was a tarot reader at my dog's dog park. They had a Halloween, party, and so I volunteered to do readings for them, but only for 2 hours. And they were like little mini readings, so it was like 5 minute limit, and I got a little break in between as well. So I may still do those heavy traffic, but not for 6 hours.
Right. Like for the sorority sisters and for your dog. It seems like people were really willing to get readings. Do you think it was more for like just the entertainment of it all, or just like people were legitimately like curious?
I think it's a safe environment, right? So it's not like you're walking into a metaphysical store that has a tarot reader,
Right. Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
This is a public venue. I mean, the fundraiser for the sorority happened in the context of homecoming. So there was a big bonfire, there was a band, the different student organizations all were doing different things. So you could, the face painting, you had, whatever they were doing. Somebody had a moon walk, those bouncy, things. I remember the cheerleaders were in there bouncing up and down. Anyway, so it was like, oh, here's a tarot, reader. And, I don't know, it was like $5, 5 minutes, something like that. Of course, this was back in the mid 90s as well. And I was surprised that there was just this really, really long line, like 60 people at the beginning, just lined up, to come to our booth. So we made some good money, but again, it was really tiring. I think people really have to set the intention to do it. If you're going somewhere like what we do at the chapel, the psychic Saturday at the end of the month, right? You need to come in with the intention, because you know that I'm here for a reading, whether it's a tarot reading, or some other type of reading. So that requires um, more intention and maybe more courage. But when it's somewhere like at a festival and it's just lots of other things going on, and there just happens to be this little booth there, then maybe people are a little bit more open, and then they see other people going up and having kind of a conversation, and so
Right.
maybe they feel a little bit safer.
I guess after you did the readings with your sorority sisters. What made you kind of go where? What happened next? Like, what got you kind of to where you are right now?
Well, I learned that I could do readings. I learned that I had to be careful with when and for how long I did them, but it took a long time for me to go back to doing those public readings. And back then, I didn't think of it as something that could earn you income, or where you could make some extra reliable income. It was just sort of something I did, but I really really thought of it just as a spiritual development tool, and mostly as a self tool. My friends, they knew that I did it. So every now and then, somebody would call me up and say, "Hey, can you do a reading for me? I've got something going on." Or sometimes for people's birthday, I would, do a reading for them on their birthday. Um, so it was more along those lines. I moved to DC, the DC area, in 1999, and about 2005 or so bought a house. And I was missing the spiritual community. I was missing that tarot, circle, or those classes in Pittsburgh. I didn't have anything like that. I've been sort of doing this on my own this whole time. And I think I must have, set that feeling out into the universe loud enough that when I bought that house, the furniture hadn't even come, and I got some mail, and this little flyer that came addressed to the person that lived there before. And it was one of those where they printed the flyer, folded it in half, stapled it, and then put it in the mail, right? So I could tell that it was a calendar of events, and it came from Arlington Metaphysical Chapel, addressed to this other person. Well, I didn't even know at the time we had a metaphysical chapel in the area. And I was really conflicted because it was technically not my mail, but it was a calendar. And I figured that, okay, I'm going to go ahead and, and open this mail that came for someone else. And I looked at their classes, and their services, and I thought, oh, this is spiritual development similar to what I've been missing. And they advertised a psychic Saturday, so I decided to go. I I had never had a reading with a medium before, but I went in. I signed up for a reading with a medium, and she said there's there's two men here. They're older. They have a grandfather energy. And she gave me the name of Juan. And she said he's with his dog, and he says his leg is okay and he doesn't feel any more pain. And the other one is showing me fields. He says like crops, like, fields. Well, my grandfather Juan passed away from complications of diabetes, and his leg was amputated.
Oh,
And
wow.
he had a golden retriever that he loved very much. And so these weren't things that, she could have known.
Right.
My other grandfather, who passed away when I was a little baby, he was a farm worker in Fresno, California. So that was the reference, to the fields. And she said, so that, the farmer grandfather kind of stepped back, and the other one stayed. And he said he was really proud of everything that I was accomplishing, but I wasn't enjoying life, and I needed time to just kind of relax and enjoy life, because I was just working, working, working. And I remember leaving, getting in my car, and I just started, I just started
Wow.
crying. But it was a very healing experience, and I thought,
Mhm.
okay, I have to um, go back. And so I started going to the services and taking some of their classes. I joined the DC Tarot Society at the time. It was called that, which was run by someone else who was associated with the chapel. And then started getting more into this. So years went by, and people there knew that I could read tarot. And they started nagging me, like, you need to teach this, you need to do readings. Why aren't you a reader in our Psychic Saturday? And so I guess I finally budged in and thought, okay, because there was a need for it. The person who was very active in it was, kind of had stepped down for this, and they had a need for it. And so I thought, okay, I guess I need to be doing more of this.
Well, that's cool. So your grandfather basically pulled the Empress card for you then.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. I think I told you this, but to let the audience know, I used to mess with the tarot cards, and I guess I shouldn't maybe say mess with them, but I would read them, And I remember it was because they were very tiny, and I thought they were really cool looking, and I would do readings for coworkers. I remember at the time, and but it was something about it, even at that time, where I remember thinking, I was like, wow, it's actually pretty accurate, or people are actually saying it seems to be legit, right? So I was going to ask you, I was like, what was the moment for you where you felt like, whoa, like maybe I do have a gift here? Or was it something that someone said when you did a reading that just knew this is kind of something I need to do?
The big moments for me was when I did a reading for a friend she called me, and she said she thought she was in trouble, and she was really worried, and I wanted a reading. And I hadn't seen her in years. She lived in a different part of the country, and I didn't really know what was going on or what she was up to, but she said she had a big problem. And so I did a reading for her, either on the phone or Zoom, long distance reading. And so this sort of legal matter uh, came up for her. And I told her that, yes, there was some wrongdoing that had happened. It was unintentional on her part. And in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't something major. So she was going to there was going to be a consequence, but it wasn't going to be a big consequence. Like, she wasn't going to go to jail. She wasn't going to have to pay a big fine, but that there was going to be something. Um, and But she didn't have to worry about. something really bad happening as a consequence of this. In the overall grand scheme of things, it was going to be okay because they weren't, the other party wasn't necessarily interested in like destroying her or sending her to
Hmm.
jail, but they had uncovered something that was done inappropriately, along sort of unethical kind of, lines. And they had bigger fish to fry, but they, something was going to happen, but not nothing big. And so, anyway, so what ended up happening is the other party, as a result of this, terminated the contract that they had with her, but they didn't, you know,
They didn't pursue anything
they
major.
didn't they didn't pursue it further. And if they had, and depending on how far they wanted to go, it could have been maybe, a lot worse for her. But that was one thing that even I was surprised that things happen in the way that the card said they were going to happen, on something that was like really important and really sensitive, you
Hmm.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. I know you've told this story before, but I don't know if you want to share this. The story that you said that you were surprised when someone, because you've mentioned when you do readings, some people can be very talkative or they'll have a conversation with you and you try to have conversations with them, but then there are times where people don't say anything and you pull out a card and you know the conversation starts. Did
Yeah.
you want to share that story or no?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're thinking about the same story, but before I go into the story, I want to say, when you go for a reading, the more precise your question is, the better the answer is going to be, right? And open-ended questions are best. Like, what do I need to know about this situation at work? Or how should I handle, this other situation and home?
Right,
Or if you don't have a very thought out question, at least the topic. Oh, I have a question about, I'm having issues with my supervisor at work and I want to talk about that, or I want to talk about my relationship. Okay, so now it's like just at least more focused. When people come and say, oh, I don't have a question, I'm just here to see what spirit has for me. Well, spirit may have a message for you that at the moment is not even going to resonate. You don't even know that you need this message, right? It probably won't become apparent for a week or two or whatever. Um, or spirit may share 20 different things with you, all superficially and nothing really, in depth. I had a woman in a 15-minute reading, and spirit had like a dozen things for her, and about 13 minutes into this 15-minute reading, she says, well, I really wanted to know about this other thing that had come up. Like, it was like maybe the third thing that came up. And I remember thinking, well, why didn't you stop me? You could have said, can we talk more about this?
right.
Instead, she let me ramble on, like
Uh,
20 other things,
yeah,
when we could have made it more useful to her if she had said, well, that, 10 minutes ago, and now when I just have 2 minutes left in her reading. But sometimes, even when sometimes people may have something inside, and they just maybe they're not ready to articulate it, right? And that's also a little bit of a different energy. So I had this woman who said she didn't have any questions. She wasn't elderly, but she was a mature woman. And the first two cards that came up for her were the Lover's card, and there was a barrier there that was the Hierophant. And something, my intuition was like, but this isn't her. Like, she's not in a relationship. Like, why are these coming up for her? Now, she hasn't told me anything about her, but like, my intuition is picking up on this message, and then my brain is saying she's not wearing a ring, and she doesn't give me the vibe that she like is with someone like and so my brain is confused. And I thought, okay, no, we're just going to give her what's here and move on. I have to trust. So I tell her, this reading is about a relationship that is challenging conventional norms. And she starts crying. I mean, just starts crying. I had to leave to bring her tissues. And I just gave her space to compose herself. And she says, "It's my son. He's gay." And this is the first time I've ever said that out loud. And for her, just saying it out loud for the first time, was a huge step. And so from there, the conversation went into how can she show up for her son in this situation, and what does her son need from her, and how does she work through some of her own um challenges with the situation,
Right.
because she wanted to do the right thing for her son. So they can be very powerful, especially when you're open to asking the
Other
question that you're
question, right?
really trying to get to.
So yeah, so that is the story that I was hoping you were going to tell, which you did. So yeah, that was I remember hearing that story, and I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful. Especially since it didn't seem like she was having a conversation with you at the beginning. So what are questions you shouldn't ask? I know you're not supposed to really ask about somebody else, right? These questions have to be about you. Now, so this is a two-part question. One, questions you're not supposed to ask, and then two, the reason you don't ask is because you've mentioned spirit. So spirits really, it's your spirit guides, right? That are, well, the person that you're reading for, it's their spirit guides that you're getting the energy from. Is that correct?
Right. So the spiritual guidance is for you, that you as the client. And if you're trying to ask for someone else or about someone else, think of it as a lot of static. You remember the old TVs in the 70s and the 80s where you just get all that static. That's in my experience what tends to happen. So for example, if your person cheated on you, and you come to a tarot reading and ask the question, why did my person cheat on me? We're going to get that static, right? Better questions. If you want to stay in the relationship, the question is maybe, how can I heal? How do I make this work? How do I forgive? Right? If you decided that you're leaving, then the question is, what can I learn from the breakup? What should I look for in the next relationship? Right? How do I navigate through this transition? And if you're uncertain, you haven't made a decision, then the questions are more like, what does it look like if I stay? Or what does it look like if I leave? Right? So to help you decide, but these are questions that are going to help you. If you're hyper focused on the why, why did the person cheat on me? Then you're asking me to look into somebody else's thoughts, hearts, or soul. And spirit is not going to let me do that
Right.
because
Without their permission.
I don't have their permission to look into their thoughts, heart, and soul. And that can be difficult, for people at times. So sometimes I have to engage them in a little bit of a more conversation up front to rescope their expectations. It happens when somebody has a loved one, could be a child, could be a sibling or a friend, right? That may be in trouble or maybe is experiencing addictions, and they come asking why is this person, doing this? What is wrong? What is wrong with them, right? So instead, the question needs to be, how can I help them? What do they need from me in this situation? How can I navigate this without getting dragged into it? I've also learned that sometimes spirit will say, well, you need to give them space. And when we give them space, we preserve that relationship. And in the future, when they're ready to come around and maybe ask for our help, they involve us in the situation, in the solution. So sometimes our role is not now, sometimes our role is in the future, and
Hmm.
sometimes we don't have a role at all other than just being there for
Just being
them
there. Yeah.
and loving them, but trusting that, that guidance.
Right. What would you say is the scary card and what's probably the like the best card, like the one that's probably the most positive? Is there such a thing as the negative card? And I guess now that I have been practicing over a year, I don't really see that like I used to. I guess I used to always be focused on the death card, right? Because it's death. Oh no, you know. And now I realize the tower card is scarier than the death card if I was to rank them. But even that, and even the tower card doesn't, to me, is not. It doesn't really seem ominous as it once did for me. But yeah, what do you say? Maybe I'm answering the question there for you, but
That,
is
well,
there such like a card that you know when you pull it, you're like, ooh, this is not going to go well.
cards in and of themselves are, I don't think, are good or bad. The decks have the same cards, but what varies is how the artist chooses to uh, interpret the card, right? So it's different art. Some have a lot of detail, some are more colorful, some are more abstract, and you connect with different ones. And so some cards can look scarier in one deck and not as scary in a different deck. And certain symbology, like the burning tower that is crumbling into the ocean, or the devil card, can evoke that fear. But the meaning of the cards also is driven by uh, the position in the reading, sort of what role they're playing in the reading, and the other cards around them, and how those cards influence that reading. So the card that you mentioned, the Tower card, I mean, I kind of think of that as the renovation card, right? Sometimes things need to be torn down. Like if you are renovating your kitchen, you have to tear it down so that you can build something better and new.
Right, right,
That could be a relationship, it can be a job, that is crumbling down, but hey, now you get to build something better. And in life, a lot of these situations that come up around the tower are situations that need to get out of our way, so that something better can come, instead. And it can be traumatizing going through the process, but there is sort of a reason why we're going through the chaos. Death is another one that is scary to people, but it means transformation, right? Death being the just maybe the ultimate transformational experience, just like the Lover's card means a sort of a relationship or a contract. The Lover's card being sort of the ultimate example of, that contract. So I would say, you know, uh, don't don't immediately be so scared when you see the symbology. Wait for the interpretation, because that is going to, depend. I mean, you might be like, oh, I got the Lover's card. That is so exciting. Well, if the Lover's card is in the barrier, it could mean that you have a limiting thought around relationships, right? That, maybe you're not open to giving or receiving love,
right,
or mean that it's a difficult relationship. So just because it looks like, yay, a happy card, if it's
right.
not in the right place, it might mean something a little bit
Or
different.
like you have to set boundaries because there's a lot going on, and you're letting all these people in. So yeah, the networking card, right? When I told my family that I was reading for people, with tarot cards, I immediately thought they were going to be like, "Oh, es brujeria," that's some witchcraft there because of the devil card. Do you feel like people, that's a misconception with tarot because of that one card?
I think it's a misconception, not just because of some of the imagery, which again can be a little bit scary.
That's
Also,
true. Right.
depending, there's also some darker, as in they have darker colors, right? The cards, and then those can be, scarier as well. But they don't understand it. They don't necessarily know um, how they work, or who you're connecting with, or and so yeah, the whole thing can be scary to people.
And I feel like that's kind of what tarot is that we are able to use, our spiritual gifts, our senses, right? And we're able to kind of get answers for the questions that we have. I guess that's my view on them, and
For
maybe you can
that,
give me a little bit more of a
for
complicated one.
well, for that, I mean, for that one, the sort of the classic imagery of the devil card is, that the devil is really big in the background, and there's a couple in the front, and he has these ropes or these chains around their neck, right? They
Right,
they
the
have
chains,
a they
yeah.
they have a collar, and what that represents um, are limiting thoughts in the simplest, terminology. I would say they're limiting thoughts. They're the things that you think, oh, I'm powerless. This thing's got a hold on me. I can't give it up, or I can't control it. But it's all in your head, because the reality is that you have control over that situation. If you look closely, the colors that are around the neck of the couple in the front um, are big, so they can just choose to lift them and be free, of this devils. So it comes up with some frequency, but it was mostly in the context around your limiting thoughts. I tell people, when you're afraid to do something, or you think you can't do something, and then I asked them, but who is saying that you can't or you shouldn't? Is that like society? Maybe it's somebody else's bias, or is it your own
Your
self
own
telling
ego.
you, right, that you can't or you shouldn't? Because that's the more powerful one. That's the one that really limits you. And I see the devil card coming up when people are experiencing some kind of limiting thought. So
Hmm.
yeah, I see it with some frequency around that context.
Right. And I guess I didn't even think about the artwork. So I know that I've bought myself some decks, right? And I've heard people say, "Oh, you're not supposed to buy your own deck." What's your thoughts on that? Are you supposed to have it gifted? But what is that all about? The whole you're supposed to get it gifted. Is it like
I'm a big
minimal?
I'm a big believer in whatever works for you, right? If you're like, I want to learn, but I want somebody to give me the card, then go that route. I have found that because the artwork is so different in the cards, different people relate to different types of art in the card. I need cards that have detail and a lot of color in them. Some of the more abstract ones, like, maybe one that just has it's the Six of Pentacles, and it just has six pentacles, six
Right.
coins. That doesn't stimulate my intuition a whole lot. But some people are wonderful readers with these cards that don't have a lot of detail in them. The very abstract cards, or the cards that have a lot of pastel colors in them, they give me a headache, and I can't really connect with them.
Hmm.
And that's all trial and error, right? So if you pick up a deck and you're like, oh, I don't connect with it, I don't understand it, it must be that I'm not good at it, and I need to like forget about this.
Right.
That's not necessarily the case. It may be that you picked up um, a deck that is not the right kind of deck for you. Especially when you're starting and you don't know, you go by something that you know may look nice, but there are some cards that I'm like, oh man, that deck is beautiful, but like I know I can't relate to that deck, but I admire it, right?
Yeah.
I know that I can't work with that deck at this point. I pretty can, fairly quickly look at something and decide, yeah, that can be for me, or no, that can't be for me. But when you're starting, you just have to try different kinds. In fact, when I was in Pittsburgh and the first time I went into that store, that bookstore, I saw the Robin Wood deck, and I asked to see it, and the guy behind the counter was a little bit hesitant to sell it to me because he said, well, you're here for the class, and a lot of times people will buy them, and after class they want to return them because they didn't connect with it. The teachers over there, they have like 100 decks. Why don't you work with a few, and then once you decide which one you like, then you can come back and buy that deck. But I was like, no, like that's my deck. I want that deck. And so I still have it. It's still one of my favorite decks. I ended up retiring it. It was the deck that I used in that fundraiser for my sorority. And now I just use it for me. I did buy a second Robin Wood deck that I use for public readings, but I still have that first one.
Wow. I never would have thought to that people would return cards or return a deck. I mean, I get it. Like there have been decks that I've seen, especially in class. Everybody brings sometimes different sets, and I don't connect with them. I find them very interesting, but it would be very hard for me to pick up with my intuition. So I guess the Rider Waite cards, right? Those are the ones that people, I guess, the standard where they begin with looking at cards. And to me, there's just a lot of detail there. And since I'm still learning, to me, I find the connection there. But I have yet to really kind of like start with another deck because I times I'm like, I still need to learn, the Rider Waite deck first before I can really, because again, like you said, if I see just a Six of Pentacles and there's just six Pentacles, I'm not sure if I'm going to really get what I'm supposed to get with that card too. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was, you mentioned in your class, like you allow us to pretty much read the cards as we see it and not use a book, for the general definition of the cards. How yeah, what's your advice for somebody who's looking at the cards but always has to look at the book, because there is more, and I've learned that too in the class. There's a lot of facets to just one card. And sometimes, we even talked about the Emperor card. I had no idea he has an orb on one of his hands. And that's just something I just saw not too long ago. And I was like, wait a second, he has an orb. And I've always looked at that card, and for some reason I just missed it, And I think we talked about the moon. There was just a lot of things in the background that sometimes I forget, or the colors, So what's your advice to somebody who's like interested in the deck, but also kind of like really wants to kind of like learning the deck? What's your advice for them?
So after 30 years, I'm still seeing things there that I had not seen before, because before they were never relevant, before. So I don't know that we ever stop learning them. And when you work with other readers, sometimes you learn other ways of looking at the card. So it's not like you're going to, I think, arrive at a place where you decide this is what the card means and it only means that, and it will always mean that, like that they evolve, right? So that's important. It's important to know, and we pick up on different things. I often say that tarot readers are like spaghetti chefs, right? You're in the mood for spaghetti, you can go to many places to get spaghetti, but nobody's spaghetti is going to taste the same as somebody else's, right? Their recipe's a little different. And over time, you learn that I like the spaghetti over here, but that one over there, I don't like it so much. And tarot readers are the same. You're going to get the base of what you're looking for, but everybody's going to give you their own recipe. And so you will resonate with some readers. and you'll like them, and some other readers you're going to be like, yeah, well, that reader didn't, really didn't do it for me. So it's finding someone that you can trust, and somebody whose message resonates with you. That's important. As far as doing your own readings, the books are a general guide or a
Hmm.
general outline, right? So, you can take and any card in the deck, and maybe you see the Four of Wands, which we commonly refer to as the marriage card. Um, you know, think of marriage as the start of a brainstorming list. When you think of marriage, you think and then start the thought process, because it means all of those things, right? It means foundations, it means commitment, it means relationships. So maybe it's not literally that somebody is going to get married, but maybe it's like there's a big commitment that they're going to make to something, maybe
Right.
at work, or maybe a big contract is coming, or setting foundations for a big project, or so again, um, think of the marriage part of it as just the start, the trigger, something that you need to associate with other things, but don't limit yourself to just that, because then, yeah, if this person is already married, you're like, why are they getting the marriage card? This makes no sense. It's in the future. Doesn't this mean they're going to get divorced and get married? It's like, no, no, no.
No.
It's, probably look at, what other things can you associate with that? Look at the card, right? The card has a strong foundation. It's the people are celebrating. So you need to kind of look for other clues in that card. And that's why if you're just looking mechanically at the book and then looking at the card, you're missing out. You have to bring in that interpretation.
Right. Oh, yeah, it's hard. It's very hard at first, and I think that's the my next question for you. What do you do, or like how did you kind of like start to kind of look at the cards and say, you know what, I'm going to give them my own interpretation, or at least kind of know like the basic definition of what the book has to say, and then I guess also have my other interpretation for this card. Do you do like I think I've seen people on YouTube say that they take a card and they just one day they pull a card from the deck and then they just try to work on that card for that day and then do the same thing the next day. Is that something that you would recommend?
Yeah, in the beginning, that was useful for me, the card a day, because, there's, 64 cards in there. And
Hmm.
so that's useful. That's a way to learn them and just research the card, be thinking about how it shows up for you that day, reflect on it before, you go to bed. You can also meditate with them, and you'll find that, the cards sometimes connect with you in a way that is very unique to you, and that is what you go with. I remember, especially when I was learning the cards, the court cards, which are each suit, there's four suits, and each one has a king, a queen, a knight, and a page. And I, kind of struggled with those a little. Well, I got the Queen of Wands in my, when one of these daily card readings. And so I decided that I would meditate. So I just kind of looked at the card and held that visual in my mind. And so the Queen of Wands has a wand, and the card has a lot of yellow. It's got the sun in the background. It's got sunflowers, sort of very radiant. And so in my meditation, this queen kind of came alive, and she took her wand and she tapped me in the head gently with her wand, like, like almost like she was anointing me. And so I looked up, and she started uh, picking up. You know how when you're the people that pick up trash, and they have these sticks
Yeah,
um,
the
at the
it's like a
end.
Yeah, or they grab with the. Oh my God, a friend of mine has one of those that he uses a
Yeah.
lot of.
So, but
Yeah,
they're picking up trash, right? And they're putting it in a bag. So she was doing the same thing too. She was picking up sunflowers and putting them in this bag. And she kept looking at me like, see what I'm doing? And so that meant for me that I had to pick up my own sunflowers. I had to harvest my own sunflowers, the sunflowers representing sort of happiness. Like I have to create my own happiness was basically the message that I took from that. And a lot of times when this queen comes up, it comes around the context of also people needing to do that for themselves. So even though it has other meanings and it can mean other things, that particular card for me can mean that somebody needs to be doing more work to develop that self-love and that self happiness. So yeah,
yeah,
other other understandings of the card also come through your study and knowledge of symbols and um, if you were raised Catholic, you'll see a lot of Catholic symbols in there, and so you can think about you might see a cross in one of them,
right.
and
The
then
Hierophant.
the Hierophant, right? What does that mean to you? Like, what do you associate with a cross, and kind of explore that from that option. So in my Egyptian studies, also enrich what I know about the cards. And so one card I wanted to talk about was the sun, and you had asked, earlier, what is a good card
Yeah, I
to
love the
get?
sun.
Yeah, I like the sun. I mean, if you look at the sun, intuitively, you can see it's radiant, it's happy. We know that people can get depressed when it's winter and there's not so much sun out there. The card has a lot of, it's got sunflowers. So it's a happy card. You can intuitively say, well, it makes things grow. Plants, flowers, they need the sun to grow. And so all of those things are true about the sun. But if I look at it and I can pick up on some of the, sort of maybe the Egyptian symbology that comes up in this card. Even though I didn't study it in this context, I can bring that knowledge in. The Rider-Waite deck has a baby, right? There's a baby that is riding a horse, and in Egyptian mythology, the sun, Ra, is depicted in three phases. There's the baby Ra, which is the when the sun is rising, right? And that's represented by the beetle pushing up the sun because babies need support. They're vulnerable and they can't be on their own. And so this stage represents renewal and rebirth. Then there's the high sun, which we also see in this card. And that is the powerful, mature version of Ra, who's going across the sky in his boat. We don't see the third version in this one, but we see it in the death card, which is the sun setting, Atum, the old man, who is getting ready to enter the underworld at sunset. And he battles his mortal enemy, Apophis, the snake, and then he rises again victorious in the morning, being reborn, sort of reminding us each morning that love has defeated evil and that we too regenerate each morning. And then Ra has a job, right, to go across the sky to bring us everything that comes with the sun and help things grow, etc. And we have a job to do here as well. Ra is light and love. That is what God is, or what spirit is. That is what we are. The ancient Egyptians thought that with our last breath, we inhaled Osiris here, and with our first exhale on the other side, we exhaled Ra, sun, light, love. So the baby in the card also has a feather and on his head, and you probably have seen those drawings or those scenes of the weighing of the heart. You got the heart on one side of the scale and the feather on the other. So the feather represents Ma'at, which is spiritual law. And this card is a beautiful reminder of divinity in nature, divinity within, how living in alignment with those spiritual laws, we become light and love like the sun. And when we're like the sun, then we also bring warmth, health, happiness, growth, healing, all of those things to the world around us. So the sun to me is a really cool card. There's a lot going on in there, you know. And again, if you have any other tradition, you may be looking at it from a Buddhist perspective, a Jewish perspective, a Zen perspective. Those symbols are going to pop up. They mean something there. So go with that.
Hmm.
Supplement with your experience and your knowledge.
Wow. That's a lot for
Yeah.
the sun card right there. And
Yeah.
I'm guessing that that's also something that you will talk a little bit more on your class that you have on November 1st.
Yes, we're going to talk about where some of these symbols appear and what they mean, the mythology behind them, and how they relate to the cards where they appear.
Wow. So we're gonna have to have you back because I'm like I feel like we just scratched the surface today, and I know there's a lot more to talk about with the tarot cards. You know, as far as like the symbolism, right? And I think maybe we could talk about that or the spreads. We didn't even get a chance to talk about spreads today, but I was also gonna ask quick question. Do you also do dream incubation, right? Is that something that you do?
I'm naturally very curious, so I've taken a lot of classes on different things. I've taken a class on pendulum, on, palmistry, on uh, astrology, and some of them I don't, it's like it's cool to know, but I don't really connect with this particular tool. But you learn by trial and error. And remember, I've been kind of going to these classes for 30 years now, so
So yeah, so you have
so I kind of know a little
a
bit
little bit
about
about
this or
everything.
that, but tarot has been the one that um I don't know. It's what resonates with me. But I had an opportunity to learn about dream incubation. I was interested in it because my dreams are very vivid. They're very colorful. They're very vivid. I get information in them, and so I was reading, and I was in Greece last year, about this time last year, and went to Delphi, which is Apollo's main temple, where they had the Oracle of Delphi, right? The Oracle of Apollo, and people would go there. So a lot of the information she would get would be from her dreams. And so people were basically going there and asking her to dream the answer to one of their questions. And I thought, well, let me see if I can if I can dream, because I have tried that for myself. If I want to know, to know something, um, and I typically uh, you know, get get that get that answer and get that answer right away. But I thought, let me see if I can do dream incubation, which is dreaming for someone else. So I approached a couple of people and I said, "Hey, do you have a question? I'm gonna ask for a dream and see what I can get." And so I had this one person who said yes. Yeah, they had a question, but they didn't tell me what the question was. I didn't want to know. I just, wanted sort of permission to dream so that I could receive a message that was intended for them. And that night, I saw this person in a store, and the store had sort of maybe different sections. They were selling clothes and shoes and sort of other things. And this person was in the store, and the person was arguing with, it appeared to be the manager of the store about some discount or some pricing, and it just didn't look like a very good situation. And and I kind of like, I woke up and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna give it another couple of days, see if I get any other dreams, see anything else comes up. But that was the only thing that I dreamed, and it was the only thing that I dreamed or that I could remember for about a week. So then I thought, okay, well, again, doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but I guess this is the dream. I have to trust it. So I called this person back and I said, okay, I'm going to talk to you about your dream. This is what I saw. This is how it felt, blah, blah, blah. So that person said, uh, I got a job offer in a retail store, and I'm not sure if I want to take this job because I hear that the supervisor, the manager there, is somebody who's very difficult, to work with. So I
Oh,
don't know if I want to take this job. And I
right.
thought, oh my God, I saw them. I saw them in the retail store. I saw them arguing with the manager. I saw it not being a particularly pleasant experience for them. So I was like, okay, that was something new and different. So yeah, I mean, there's so many things out there.
That's cool. That is really cool. So yeah, we're gonna probably have to talk a little bit more about that the next time. Where can people find you if they wanted to reach out to you, and if they wanted a reading from you? Where would they go?
Yeah, so you can always find me through the Arlington Metaphysical Chapel, arlingtonmeta.org. I'm typically there the last Saturday of the month for their
Yeah.
Psychic Saturday fundraiser. I host the Tarot Tuesdays on Tuesday evenings, first and third Tuesday of the month. We get together. That's not like a class per se where I teach this is how you read it, but even if you don't have not taken a class before, you come and you see how it is and you ask questions and we exchange readings for each other, and it's a sort of a hands-on way to learn. And I also teach classes through the chapel. Some are intro, to tarot, and some
Hmm.
are on more advanced topics, like the one that I'm doing on November 1. You don't need to be a tarot reader or to know a lot about it to take the class. If you do, or if you have your a deck, then the takeaways are going to be more meaningful, but maybe just coming and hearing about the stories, the mythology, especially if you're into, ancient Egypt, might be interesting for you. But that's a good place. And I'll, share my email with you, and maybe you can
Yeah.
add it in
I'll
the
have it
comments,
linked.
so people can reach out if they have questions or if they would like a reading. They can always also schedule them through the chapel. Though the chapel pretty much has like 30-minute reading for this price, an hour reading for this price. And
Right.
if you're looking for something else, like something shorter, something longer, then, maybe reaching out directly is better.
Hmm. We are of light and love. So with that, I will say thank you, and I know we will be talking again. So thank you again, Lorena, for being my guest today.
Yeah. Thank you, and congratulations on your channel. It's wonderful. Thank you for sharing these things with your viewers.
Thank you.